Madam Secretary, it's going to be a real challenge for a lot of schools to safely reopen and get those kids back in a classroom environment. What are some of the challenges, and what do you think are the most important things that parents need to be concerned about when schools reopen to make sure they're safe?
Well, thanks, first of all, for having me, Mike. And let me just say that I think, the president's been very clear, and the data shows that kids need to get back in school. There are all kinds of ways to do it safely. And of course, everyone is committed to doing that. But the reality is there's other measures than just whether kids are going to get or pass the virus. There are other health measures to consider. Kids who've been home for months, not learning and not continuing to advance themselves. There are mental health concerns. There are socio-emotional health concerns. And I think especially of kids who are in circumstances where being in school is the most important part of structure in their life and opportunity. And we don't want to see those kids falling further and further and further behind. All kids have got to get in school and continue learning, and it clearly can be done safely. The data shows that kids have a far lower incidence of catching and spreading the disease, the virus. And schools in many of the countries in Europe have reopened and done so without any kind of significant spike in cases. And so it's really important that education leaders get going with making sure their schools reopen this fall.
You mentioned something of great importance. That's the mental health of the students. I would maybe add the mental health of the parents, because a lot of parents have been thrown into an incredibly stressful situation. How do they balance between no longer having their children at school, balancing their own work schedules? This has created an enormous level of stress for families. So I think a lot of people are saying, as parents, gosh, our kids need to be back in school for our sake as well as for theirs.
Yeah, that's so true. We've heard that across the country. And by the same token, we've also heard from parents for whom the distance learning for their children has gone very well. I think ultimately the point in all of this is kids have got to get back to learning, and schools have got to reopen. And where they can't or won't, parents have to have other options and other choices, and be able to make the right decision for their child or their children and for their future.
One of the things I know you've stressed as Education Secretary is that one size doesn't fit all. Families should make decisions, individual localities ought to make decisions. Even the way that schools reopen are not going to be the same all across the country. Rural America may look very differently than urban America. So how does the Department of Education help support these local decisions at the school board level so that they can make flexible decisions based on their unique communities and needs?
Well, importantly, we've done everything we can within the statutes to ensure that states and local districts have the maximum amount of flexibility to be able to do what they need to do for their families and their students. And we're going to continue to do that. We're also continuing to provide all of the information that has been made available from both U.S. sources around safely doing this, as well as international perspectives and experiences with it. But we know that we know some of the very practical things, and you put into place some of the very practical things, and you've gotten yourself a long way toward the finish line of making sure that you can reopen safely and do it well. But this is an opportune time for school leaders to look afresh at how they're doing things and understand that a one-size-does-not-fit-all approach can't be the mode going forward. That I think this last several months have demonstrated that education in general has to become a lot more nimble and flexible in order to address the realities of the circumstance of that time, as well as the needs of different children and their families.
I want to touch upon a couple of very big Supreme Court decisions that have happened this week. One that really advanced the notion of I would say religious freedom and school choice, where the Supreme Court said that you cannot exclude a school just because it's a religious school from being able to receive scholarship money. That was a huge decision. And then the other decision had to do with just the idea that a religious school has the power to hire and fire who it wishes based on the beliefs, the doctrines, the practices of the people, because it should be in keeping with their commitment to faith. These are big things. Speak to how they will help create a greater level of school choice and opportunity for kids.
Sure. Well, the Espinoza decision is very, very significant for the future of giving families and kids many more options and choices in their K-12 education. It has broad implications, and the ruling yesterday on the two religious freedom cases is another affirmation that institutions or organizations that are faith-based, religious in nature, need to have the same kind of freedoms that everybody else enjoys. And so it was a tremendous reaffirmation of that, and has, like I said, huge implications for state-based programs to expand choices to families. And, you know, at this time where families are looking for the right answer for their kids going forward, I think it comes at a very important time, and states, I know, are looking afresh at what they can do to either augment and add to programs that they already have, or introduce more of these programs if they have not yet done so.
Madam Secretary, on a personal level, when the President picked you to be Education Secretary, I'm not sure you could have imagined what you were getting yourself into, but I want to commend you for handling with great grace and resolve this job, staying in it for all this time, against a lot of ridiculous pressure that maybe was thrown at you from education unions and some of the media. What has been the secret of you being able to just stay focused on the task ahead and to do it with truly such grace? I commend you for that. What's the secret of that?
Well, thank you. Thank you. I would say most fundamentally, my faith has continued to help be the rudder. And my focus, my focus has been for over 3 decades on helping the most marginalized children have an opportunity. And that has just expanded in this role. And my focus is really on doing what's right for students. And that's why it's so important that kids get back to school this fall. And if they can't go back, if their school, for whatever reason, isn't able to serve them the way they need to be served, their families need to have other options. And that's why I think this really is an opportune time to think afresh about what K-12 education looks like going forward. And I just want to urge school leaders to, take this opportunity to demonstrate grit and determination yourself to solve these problems, to ensure your kids can get back into school and can continue learning, and use your creative ingenuity to address things afresh and to look at them differently, because we know that out of crisis ultimately comes the greatest inventions and the greatest advancements, if we are determined that will be the case.
Well, we are so very grateful, Education Secretary Betsy Devos, for your joining us today. Wish you well. I know you've got a huge task ahead. We thank you for being a part of our conversation today. Thank you so very much.
Thanks so much, Mike.